Good morning, everybody. This is Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm, speaking to you today on Good Friday, April 10th, 2020. Happy Friday, everybody. At the end of the week, we got through another one. And so I wish everyone a joyous weekend, restful weekend, and let's get to a little bit of breaking news. I've been getting a lot of calls really since the beginning of this thing. About the situation where you are an essential worker or you're an essential business and you have to stay open. How do I keep my workforce safe? How do I stay safe in this time? And so the CDC has issued guidelines recently, within 24 hours, on this issue. And so I thought I'd bring it to everybody because I know everyone is concerned about it. It is a real catch-22, particularly if you are an at-risk person, to have to choose between sheltering in place, staying safe, staying away from potential exposure, and going out and earning a living. Similarly, with employers, it's the same issue, only slightly in reverse. Employers need to provide a safe place for their workers, as well as the general public, their customers, vendors, et cetera. So today it's good that the CDC has issued this guideline, and it's a lot of common sense, but it's the CDC guideline, and I think from an employer standpoint, a company standpoint, it's going to become a standard of care. And so down the road, if you're not doing these things, I think, and something, God forbid, happens, I think you're going to be criticized if you're doing and not doing these things. So if someone comes in close contact with someone who is suspected to have or actually has a confirmed case of COVID-19 and they come back to work, they generally speaking, there's 48 hours where you're non-symptomatic if you catch it at that point. So if you can stay off for 48 hours at that point, I think that's good. And if you're asymptomatic after that point, then you can come back to work. But the employers need to put some safety in place for those situations. So if you're asymptomatic and you're coming back to work, employers should start to pre-screen people as they come into the workforce. In other words, take their temperature before the individual enters the facility. Now, if someone has a fever, they may or may not have COVID. And if they don't have a fever, they may or may not have COVID. But certainly if they have a fever, then it's good to go home and see if the fever passes, or get chest tested or check if you have other symptoms, cough, headache, that sort of thing. Regular monitoring, you should monitor those employees, and the employees should self-monitor under the supervision of their employer's occupational health program. Again, you want to keep a close watch on temperature. That employee should wear a face mask. One thing let me say about face masks that I think people are misunderstanding. You wear a face mask in public, you're protecting yourself to a certain extent, but you're really protecting other people. This is about keeping your coughs, keeping just droplets of spit that occur when you talk, keeping those droplets out of the air. And so that's why we're wearing the mask. We're not wearing the mask because we think it's going to, particularly if it's not an N95 mask, it's not going to protect us from getting the disease necessarily, although it's certainly going to reduce that risk. But what it will do is it'll prevent the amount of expectorant that's out there, and that's going to make us all safer. So wear the mask. Wear the mask in your workplace if you're around people. And employers should issue face masks or approve whatever the employee is wearing. Employees should then still continue to keep a safe social distance, and that really should be whether or not the person is suspected of contact or not. That 6 feet barrier scientists tell us is very, very important. So employers should do everything reasonably available to keep workers 6 feet apart, preferably keep them in different rooms if you can. Obviously, if you've got the ability to telework, but we're really not talking about folks that have that ability here. We're talking about, we'll get to who those folks are in a second. But we're really talking about people that kind of have to work together. And then disinfecting clean workspaces several times a day. Wash your hands. Employers should encourage employees to wash hands and clean their workspace, et cetera. If an employee becomes sick during the day, then that person should go home and get tested. And if there's symptoms, then you should stay out of work for 14 days if you can. And that's where these paid sick leave benefits can come in. So these guidelines apply to essential workers who are having to go into work, and these guidelines could change as this situation develops and matures. But we're talking about law enforcement personnel. We're talking about call center workers for 911 and other important call centers. We're talking about energy workers, people that are hazardous material responders from government and the public sector, janitorial staff and other custodial staff. I mean, those folks are very important because they're helping to do this sanitation work. And then workers, including contracted workers and vendors in food and agriculture, critical manufacturing, information technologies, energy, government facilities, hospitals, any place where you have to be in order to interact with the public, et cetera. The CDC is also advising people not to share headsets or other objects that come near your mouth or your nose. You should frequently clean commonly touched surfaces. If you can get wipes or just soap and water with paper towels is really good enough, particularly if it's warm water, that the soap really breaks down the oil and fat that hold the virus, the proteins of the virus together. Employees and employers should work together to pilot wearing face masks. I know in every situation, face masks may inhibit process or may even be unsafe. So you got to weigh all of that. But there are times when face masks can be worn and not worn. I think particularly if you're not working and you're just kind of hanging out or you're conferencing with people, even if you're 6 or 7 feet away, still good to wear that face mask, just again to knock down those expectorants. Employers should work with their maintenance facility to try to increase airflow and air exchange within rooms. I've noticed some hospitals are doing zero pressure situations where all the air is being recycled constantly, and that certainly helps limit the transmission of the virus. And then, if there are breaks, or we still need to practice physical distancing as much as we can, and really start thinking through, can I stagger breaks? Can I stagger work times? If you've got a lot of people coming in at one time, can you stagger that over the course of, 20 minutes, half an hour, just so that you don't have large groups of people clumped together for an extended period of time? An extended period of time to me is 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes even. That's really where we're in the most danger, is where we're in these groups, we're tight together, we're breathing, we all, whether we want to realize it or not, just by talking and breathing, are expectorating small amounts of saliva and spit and other bodily liquids into the air. And it's that where they kind of hang in the air before they fall. That's really where the danger is. And so the more an employer can limit that, I think the better off they are. Again, I think the legal significance for this, for small businesses and other businesses, is these types of things are going to become standards of conduct and might become definitions of what a reasonable business under the circumstance would do. So that's one reason why I wanted it to bring to everybody. And I also want to send my thoughts and prayers to folks that are having to make those hard choices about whether to stay open, keep their business open, and provide a safe workplace. And those workers that are going out every day and to some extent or another putting themselves at risk for exposure. And so the more we can do to keep our environment safe, whether it's our home environment, our work environment, the park where we're walking, staying away from each other, then the better this is going to be. So again, I appreciate it. For those who are believers, I hope you have a happy and joyous Easter. For my Jewish friends, I hope you've enjoyed your Passover season, and for everybody else, I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, a restful weekend. I tell you what, for what it's worth, I give everybody who's listening to this broadcast permission to not worry about anything until Monday. Go home, watch some Netflix, enjoy your family, whether they're in your house or texting or calling. Call some friends, get some social interaction that way. Enjoy the weekend, get some rest, and then let's come back stronger, bigger and better than ever on Monday to have another strong week. Again, thank you so much. It's my honor and pleasure to send out these broadcasts. So many of you have emailed and texted and called me and told me that you enjoy them, and that really, frankly, that really makes me happy, and I'm glad that you're getting so much out of it. Please feel free to share it via email or on social media so others can see it if you found it helpful. Again, thank you so much, and I'll see you on Monday. Good night.